A few times a decade, a show comes out that seems to dominate the media landscape. And in 2016, Netflix launched one of the first streaming shows that felt like everyone was watching and everyone was talking about: Stranger Things. Stranger Things was originally intended as an anthology series, but due to its popularity, the show has gone on for 5 seasons produced over a decade. Stranger Things has been a massive win for Netflix, its creators, and its cast. But while everything looks perfect on the surface, things have not been so smooth behind the scenes, with the Stranger Things creators and certain cast members facing a number of controversies. And with the final season about to release, it seems as though Stranger Things is facing its biggest controversy yet, as the latest on-set allegations concern 2 of the show's biggest stars, Millie Bobby Brown and David Harbour. And on top of all of the allegations David Harbour is facing from the Stranger Things set, he's also making headlines offset for all the wrong reasons. So that's what we'll be discussing today: the behind-the-scenes stories from Stranger Things, the on-set tensions and allegations, the drama surrounding David Harbour, including stories from Marvel sets and Harbour's other co-stars that have never spoken about him before. So sit back, relax, grab a drink and a snack, and let's dive in to the chaotic, messy, and upside-down world of Stranger Things. In 2013, the identical twins Ross and Matt Duffer came up with an idea for a series inspired by their favorite childhood 80s movies like E.T. and Stand By Me. At this stage, the Duffer Brothers' IMDb page was extremely sparse, as they only had a few projects listed that were short student films that they had done while they were in college and film school. 2 years later, in 2015, when they got to finally pitch their limited series idea, they still hadn't had an abundance of experience and had only just started working as writers on their first TV show, Wayward Pines. Also in 2015, the brothers released their first film called Hidden. The script for Hidden had actually been acquired in 2011, so 2015 really seemed to be the Duffer Brothers' year, with their first film and their first TV show coming out. But for the Duffer Brothers, 2015 was about to get even better. The Duffers pitched their limited series to a dozen or so production companies, but no one was interested, and they were often told to eliminate the kids from the focus of their story and make it adult and more scary. The Duffer Brothers ended up getting a booklet of their series rendered. It had storyboarding and pictures and the entire story they wanted to tell in a little booklet, and they sent this out to a number of people, one of which was Sean Levy, who is well known in the industry. One of the last things he did was Deadpool and Wolverine. The addition of Sean Levy was a massive assist to the Duffer Brothers, and Levy helped them pitch their series to Netflix. Although the brothers were very inexperienced, Netflix really liked the idea, and they were looking for original content at that time after the success of shows like Orange is the New Black and House of Cards. Netflix were so keen on the story, in fact, that within 24 hours of their meeting, they purchased the limited series of 8 episodes with a few concessions, one of which was that they had to move the series out of the expensive to film in New York and the show be given a new setting, which ended up being Indiana. Netflix was taking a big gamble on the unknown at the time Duffer Brothers, as although they had huge successes like Orange is the New Black as a Netflix original, the Duffer Brothers show was not only going to be a Netflix original, but it was going to be the first show to be entirely produced by Netflix. The brothers and Sean Levy pitched Netflix in March 2015, and just 1 month later in April, Netflix had made the announcement that the new series, which was still then called Montauk, was going to be happening. 2 months later, in June, Winona Ryder was the first to be cast playing Joyce Byers, and Winona Ryder had never had a role on TV before. Her only stipulation was around the Beetlejuice sequel revival that she and Tim Burton were working on at that time, and that we now know did come to be. Her only stipulation was that if this movie did end up happening, that they would work around her schedule so that she could do that project no matter what. And we will come back to discussing casting and other projects and contracts when we discuss what's happening today with the press and everything that's happening with the final season. Also in June 2015, David Harbour was cast as the other adult lead role. That month, there also was the major retooling of the original idea that Netflix wanted, including moving it out of New York. And Netflix has called this period that they were majorly changing things up and retooling it as a creative evolution of the show. In August 2015, the rest of the show was cast, mainly the kid characters. And although a lot of the kid actors had done roles here and there before, this definitely was a big step up for all of them and the first major lead role for the majority of them. Millie Bobby Brown was cast as Eleven, Finn Wolfhard as Mike Wheeler, Gatton Mazzaro as Dustin Henderson, Caleb McLaughlin as Lucas St. Clair, and Noah Schnapp as Will Byers. They were primarily playing the younger kids, and then some of the older kids and teens were played by Natalia Dyer as Nancy Wheeler, Charlie Heaton as Jonathan Byers, and Joe Carey as Steve Harrington. Last to be cast for the first season was Matthew Modine, who ended up playing Dr. Martin Brenner. Shannon Pruser in the first season played a small but very impactful role once the show came out. There was a kind of cult following towards her character, Barbara Holland, and later seasons of the show added other cast members, primarily Sadie Sink as Max Mayfield, Priya Ferguson as Erica Sinclair, Maya Hawke as Robin Buckley, Brett Gelman as Murray, Darcy Montgomery as Billy, and Jamie Campbell-Bower as Vecna. With the show cast, the following month in September 2015, production officially began on Stranger Things. The show shot through the end of 2015 with each of 8 episodes taking about 11 days to film each, but as the seasons continued, the amount of days it took to produce the episodes skyrocketed, with the last season of Stranger Things that's about to come out taking about 48 weeks, almost a year, to shoot the entirety of the 8 episodes. The show was supposed to be a one-and-done limited series when it was first being tooled, but halfway through the production, Netflix came to the Duffers and asked them to do more and see if they could expand the series further. Stranger Things Season 1 was released in its entirety in July 2016, and it wasn't just a success, it was an absolute phenomenon. It did also kind of go on to destroy television as we know it, because it was a huge contributing factor as to why we now get these 8-episode seasons every 2 years, or in the case of Stranger Things, more than 2 years. The final season of the show, season 5, is currently 2.5 weeks away from being released when I'm filming and hopefully releasing this. So it will be coming in mid-November 2025, and the last season of the show, season 4, came out in the summer of 2022. I've had 3 Halloweens in this little gnome house that I live in, and I've never watched a new episode of Stranger Things in this house. The last time that I watched the new season, I was in the house before this one. The show's success continued to grow through amazing positive reviews. The novelty and the popularity of the binge model also really helped, because it was a novelty when Stranger Things first came out. The cheapness at the time also of a Netflix subscription, it meant that people hearing so many good things about Stranger Things, it wasn't too much to purchase and then go on and have a monthly subscription. It's certainly not what it costs today, along with the fact that people could also share their accounts back then too. The show came out at exactly the same time all over the world, which I really do think sometimes that they don't take into account how massive that is, because I mean, I think that is a lot to do with like YouTube and things as well, that it just can be viewed at the same time by everyone. And people, especially now, talking about things on social media and stuff, that can be a big factor. And mentioning social media, at this time in 2016, we also were in this new world of sharing everything we watch, talking about everything, doing reviews of episodes on YouTube and all the stuff like that. So the show just spread like wildfire. It was a runaway hit for Netflix and the Duffer Brothers and its cast because they all became massively famous overnight, especially the young kids who were praised for their performances. And they even had them like at the Oscars delivering pizza and things because it was a phenomenon. As I mentioned, the first season of the show was devised by the Duffer Brothers as a self-contained story, but when halfway through production, Netflix was like, oh, can we not do some more? They had already started to think of stories. And with Netflix looking at Stranger Things numbers and seeing what a hit it was, a season 2 really was a no-brainer. Stranger Things 2 was greenlit, and the fact that the show was originally devised as standalone kind of worked out hugely in the favor of the cast, especially the young stars. The cast originally signed on for a limited series, so they needed to sign new contracts for season 2 onward. During the first season, it was reported that the kid cast were making around $20,000 an episode, but given how popular the show was and how instrumental they were to it, it's being reported today that all of the kids are earning, or former kids are earning well into the six figures, and some of the biggest stars are earning around $250,000 per episode. I say former kid cast because obviously the series has been in production so long, 10 years from when they started filming in September 2015 to the final season being released this month, November, and next month, December 2025. So it's been a decade. The kids are all well into adulthood. Some of them are even married and have kids themselves. Now, I will expand on this later because I think it really plays into a lot of the stuff with David Harbour and Millie Bobby Brown, but just put a flag in it for the moment. I think that the cast, especially the kids, signed on for 2 more seasons with seasons 2 and 3, and then they had new contracts for season 4 and 5, and I'll explain why I think that happened. And I think it is one of those puzzle pieces that may indicate why there's certain issues between cast members and things, or might even be just a contributing factor and where some tension has come from, but we will get into that in just a second. It could also be that they signed contracts for season 2 and 3 and then there were like major changes that happened in the contract season 4 and 5, because there are some little things that on the surface look like super insignificant, but in the sort of TV world, especially a show like this, they mean a lot, and I will explain all that in just a second. Season 2 of Stranger Things went immediately into production once all the new contracts and everything were signed, and the second season consisted of 9 episodes, which were released in October 2017, a year and 3 months after the first season. But as I said, this timetable would not continue. There were almost 2 years between season 2 and season 3, with the third season being released in July 2019. Stranger Things continued this 2 years between production cycles, but season 3 and season 4 ended up having an additional year tacked on due to the pandemic, meaning season 4 came out almost to the day 3 years after season 3. Season 4 is also the first time all the episodes were not released at once. They ended up releasing the first 7 episodes in May of 2022, and in July they ended up releasing the final 2 installments. By this stage, Netflix was reportedly paying $30 million to produce an episode of the show, meaning that season 4 was estimated to cost upwards of $270 million. But that was nothing on the upcoming season 5, which is being reported to have cost between 50 and 60 million per episode, meaning the final season of Stranger Things has reportedly cost upwards of $500 million. And all of that and everything we've discussed so far is very important context for everything we're going to discuss, because the fact this was the majority of the cast's first big role, these roles that have made up the majority of their careers, and the fact that this was the true first Netflix original that they produced everything for, that it was a massive juggernaut, and that it's costing $500 million to produce. It means there are a lot of things on the line, and they are important for what we're going to go into now. The first crack in the perfect PR package that was Stranger Things happened just before the premiere of Stranger Things 2 in October 2017. The actor Charlie Heaton, who played Jonathan Byers on the show, who is actually British, was stopped by security at the Los Angeles International Airport. Custom agents had used a dog and found what they called a trace amount of cocaine. Heaton wasn't arrested, but he was denied entry into the US and sent back to London. In official statements, Heaton described it as an immigration issue. This story around Heaton absolutely exploded because, one, Stranger Things was super popular. Everybody was anticipating the new season. Netflix had also pushed forward this squeaky clean image of the cast, especially the young cast, and the fact that there was a huge amount of PR and marketing driven towards Stranger Things to hype up the new season of the show. So, of course, anything controversial, it's just going to pour gasoline on that story. Netflix's PR went into overdrive, and while Heaton did release originally the immigration issue, he did put out a statement, and Netflix just quietly dropped him from a lot of the press appearances, and obviously he didn't make it to the premiere after being denied entry. Obviously, Netflix have an army of lawyers and all the money in the world, but as a fellow British-Irish person who had a visa and then a green card to the US, I wouldn't want to be dealing with that, because even though he wasn't arrested, having any sort of black mark or being denied entry, it does not make your life easier. And I'm sure for years afterwards, if not still, because there is more scrutiny when entering the US, I'm sure he was still dealing with questions. And even Netflix probably had to really help with getting work permits and things like that renewed. That's just based on my experience. It was always, you do not want to do anything at all, like even the most minor of things, because it really can impact your situation with visas and green cards and all of that, because you are a guest in the country without being a citizen. According to quite a few people I spoke to, including people who worked at this time, not on Stranger Things, but at Netflix in like the law and PR departments, this was when the cast, the Duffer Brothers, and just anybody to do with the show had a bit of a, oh shit, this decision by one of these young actors could really, really cause some issues for the show. And this is when they decided that they were going to have a lot of media training and really tightly control the media coaching for especially the young cast, because they were obviously growing up and they're going to start living their own lives and doing things. And of course, like they go through media training before, but this incident was really defining for how they would do things going forward with PR and marketing. And you can see now, like, they are all very well media trained and have had very tight media coaching, and that will also become relevant when we talk about some things that are going on currently. But Heaton eventually returned, rehabilitated his image, and he continued working on the show and is of course in the final season. But this definitely was the first little crack in the kind of wholesome veneer of Stranger Things. 5 months after the second season premiered, and after the situation with Heaton, there were the first signs of on-set controversy that went mainstream, and these concerned the Duffer Brothers themselves and how they were allegedly running their set and treating their crew members, especially the female crew members. A former Stranger Things grip alleged that showrunners Matt and Ross Duffer had created a verbally abusive and toxic environment on set, especially towards women. The woman who spoke out worked in the grip department. Her name was Peyton Brown, and she actually worked under her father, I believe, in the grip department. And when she came forward, she had a ton of pictures and things on Instagram with the cast. A lot of the younger cast followed her, doing social things together. And once she came forward, they all like unfollowed her, and there was kind of a pullback from anybody that was associated with her on the show. The story didn't really get much traction in the beginning, but then a few other women from the show spoke up and backed up Peyton. The most experienced person from the show that spoke out in support of Peyton was a script supervisor called Lori Grabowski. She is a very experienced script supervisor, and she actually worked on the entire first season of Stranger Things and all of the second season except for the last 2 episodes, which is kind of odd that she worked on the first 7 and not the last 2 when she'd done the first season as well. If you don't know what a script supervisor is, it's one of those roles on a set that kind of sounds like it's something different than it is. The script supervisor's main role is continuity, and they do have a lot of jobs like preparing daily reports for the production team and logs, and they usually are the ones involved with the second camera assistant and the production sound mixer with the slate and like lining things up so that the camera and the sound slates have like the same numbering and everything. And by slate, I mean one of these that is like one of the first things that you think of when you think of a set. As I said though, their main role is continuity, and I've used this example before, but it'd be like if I had a script supervisor, the way sometimes you'll see me cut and I'll be talking, G will be sitting like this, and then I'll cut, and then she'll be over here. A script supervisor would be like, Gloria, you were sitting up like this. You have to stay sitting up like this for when we do, I'm shooting this way, facing the camera towards you. If I had another camera over here and they're going to cut to that one, they'd want G to be in the same position. On a set, it's obviously so much more complicated than that because people don't talk directly into the camera, which is something you have to get used to doing, let me tell you. And they'll have things like, somebody's drinking a drink. You picked it up with your left hand and, it had this much liquid left in it. And, even things like, people get injuries in the beginning of a movie and it's still there by the end, and making sure everything is the same. And on good TV shows, they'll have a show Bible, which will like go through everything like about the characters. Like if you said in an episode a character has a sister, if you said they went to a certain university, and all of that stuff is like obviously important because it really takes you out of a show whenever they said, oh, they're an only child, and then a sister pops up in season 5 or something like that. So the script supervisor is pretty integral to shows like this. And Lori Grabowski seems like a very experienced script supervisor because she's worked very consistently since 1996 and has done huge projects like Scream 4, Avengers Infinity War, Age of Ultron, Deadpool and Wolverine, Guardians of the Galaxy, Black Panther, The Vampire Diaries, Spider-Man Homecoming, Loki, Only Murders in the Building, and that is literally a 10th of the projects that she's done. As I said, Lori worked on 2 full seasons almost of Stranger Things. Her last episode was The Lost Sister, which most Stranger Things fans believe is by far the worst episode of the series. You can actually see Lori's name in graffiti in one of the Chicago scenes of this episode. That episode was actually supposed to be titled differently. It was supposed to be titled The Lost Brother because the main focus in that episode was supposed to be a male character instead of a female character, but they changed it. And the episode got a lot of criticism, primarily for being a bottle episode, and fans really felt like it halted the story. And really from the main cast, there was like some archival footage of like other characters, but it was primarily just Millie Bobby Brown's 11 that was in that episode, and it just was something that really didn't resonate with people. With Lori, she ended up coming out and backing up what Peyton was saying by putting a post on her Instagram and saying that Peyton was telling the truth. The story then got picked up and got a lot of traction and started to spread into the mainstream. I think it is pretty significant that Lori spoke up because she is pretty experienced, and as I talk about a lot in videos, one thing about working on set is you keep your mouth shut, especially if you want to continue working. It's why you constantly hear me say, my friend or someone I know, because people do not want to speak out with their name attached. And it's why sometimes I even have to say, and you'll hear me do this later with something with David Harbour, be like, oh, they were teaching David Harbour something, because if I said what the something was, it's very easy to deduce who I'm talking about. Prior to this post, Lori had posted about Stranger Things on her Instagram, and her Instagram isn't something that like she's posting on a ton, but the other time she posted was when she actually had the cast and crew over to watch the 2017 Super Bowl, and in the 2017 Super Bowl, they aired the trailer for Stranger Things. So it was like a really big deal. And she posted a recording of Finn Wolfhard, Noah Schnapp, and Gatton Mazzaro reacting to the trailer. Lori's Insta post, where she backed up what Peyton said, read, I am one of these women Peyton referenced. It was very real, not only to me, but other women on the set that also want to share their story. Peyton Brown witnessed not only my experience, but the similar experiences of others. I don't know Miss Brown very well, but what I do know is that there's absolutely nothing false about her statement. Myself and other women who are willing to share their stories of our experiences on the set of Stranger Things are living proof. I was the script supervisor of the show for nearly 2 full seasons. I just could not stand by and let Peyton be called a liar, because what she said is unfortunately very true. I had no interest in sharing my personal story from working on Stranger Things until I saw so many people accusing Miss Brown of being a liar. I just can't stay silent. After Lori spoke out too, the story went pretty much viral, and the Duffers issued a very carefully worded statement, which you will see pop up more times throughout this video. Their statement read, we're deeply upset to learn that someone felt uncomfortable on our set. High stress nature of productions, tempers occasionally get frayed, and for that we apologize. The brothers qualified the statement by saying, we think it's important not to mischaracterize our set. Netflix did announce an internal review, and they have conducted internal reviews before this Stranger Things one, mainly with House of Cards and Kevin Spacey, which at that time they didn't find any wrongdoing. Netflix's internal review was quietly concluded a few weeks after, and there was no like public findings that came out. Netflix issued a statement saying that they looked into the concern that was raised when they heard of the allegations and found no wrongdoing. Maintaining a safe and respectful atmosphere on set is important to us, and we know it is to the Duffer Brothers as well. Several of the women who did speak out did end up saying that they were not themselves contacted by Netflix. There was one woman who spoke out about the Duffer Brothers and said that she'd had a great experience on set and she'd never had a better experience, but she didn't disclose in her Instagram post that she was actually dating and is now engaged to one of the Duffer Brothers. Interestingly, Lori has removed her post addressing the Duffer Brothers. It seems like it was sometime later in that year in 2018, because her Instagram was entirely wiped, and that's why I can't be sure when it was erased, because from 2018 it's just like the account didn't exist and all the links and everything are dead. And from that point on her Insta, when she was like starting posting again, she's only mentioned Stranger Things once, and it was when she reposted the Super Bowl reaction video that I was referencing, and she reposted that just a few years ago in 2022. It wouldn't be surprising to me if Lori took it down, since she's still working in the industry and obviously people looking into her for future jobs. She might not want them to see that she'd spoken out, because as I said, that is not the way Hollywood want you to do things. But having friends that work or worked in Netflix's legal department, I wouldn't be surprised if Netflix had something to do with taking it down, considering the last season has cost $500 million and was cost more than $1 billion with all 5 seasons. well more than $1 billion. And also considering everything else we're about to discuss about behind the scenes and the on-set dynamics. The biggest stories circulating right now regarding the behind the scenes of Stranger Things are around David Harbour. He's been in the headlines lately for a number of stories, the two biggest of which are, one, the allegations that have come out from his ex-wife Lily Allen, and two, the allegations about his on-set behavior around Millie Bobby Brown in particular, and her filing a grievance with Netflix about him and his behavior. In order to explain what is going on with David Harbour at the moment, I do need to explain a little bit about his relationship with Lily Allen and the experiences that people I know have had working on projects, mainly Marvel projects, with David Harbour. So in 2019, Lily Allen and David Harbour met on the celebrity dating app Raya in early 2019. They started attending a few of the same events, and in late 2019 they ended up going official on Instagram, and there were pretty much engagement rumors almost immediately from this point on. And then they did get married the following year in September 2020 in Las Vegas. I'm sure most people know who Lily Allen is. She's a very well-known British singer that has been around for a long time. She started on MySpace, so it has to be over 20 years that she's been around and been pretty significant. And in that time, she herself has had a lot of controversies too, but that is probably something for another video. She has 2 kids from her previous relationship that she was bringing into her relationship with David Harbour. She was previously married to Sam Cooper, and in her relationship with Sam Cooper, it was her who had infidelity, and I will explain a little bit more about that because it ties into some things that's going on now, weirdly. Well, not like ties in, but there's similar sources, let's say, for some situations. So from 2019 through 2023, everything appeared perfect for Lily Allen and David Harbour. They would go to premieres together and events, and they would give interviews where they would reference each other. And Lily Allen continued to do work in the UK, but they primarily lived in the US for David Harbour's acting work. They did do a lot of profile features when they were married, discussing their marriage and life together, and one of the most significant of these was in Architectural Digest, and this is getting a lot of views on YouTube because of some of the unfortunate things that they said in this, and I will, as always, leave it linked below in the sources, but I will also show clips as well. And they ended up doing like a tour of their apartment, like pretty standard in an Architectural Digest video and feature. And I've had a few people actually ask me before, I think it was on my Ashton Kutcher and Mila Kunis video, why these like big stars would do Architectural Digest and let people into their home and showing what their home is like. Because as a big celebrity, like letting people into your home and seeing your home and even like the layout of your home can be dangerous for some of those really big celebrities, especially for people like Ashton and Mila who have so much fucking money. Like, why would they want to do this? Especially because as well, like then when they did the Architectural Digest thing, they never showed their kids. They were always like, we're never going to show our kids. They even talked about this before they had kids, and we know now that they needed to use their kids as some sort of shield, and they've thrown them out to the media and stuff. But back then, like, why would they do this? And the answer really is money. And even people that are that rich, a lot of these designers will go to them and say, listen, I'll give you all the stuff in your house for free. I'll furnish your house for free and, design the whole thing if you do this feature in Architectural Digest. And sometimes even the celebrities will approach designers or Architectural Digest and all of that sort of thing. It all comes down to that, which, I mean, I've mentioned before, like Leonardo DiCaprio, all the money he has. And I think it was Versace that did his entire house for free. And it's always the richest people that get stuff for free. It is mind-blowing. But Honestly, that's why a lot of them do it. Both Lily Allen and David Harbour have publicly spoken about their mental health struggles and their past issues with substances. So they did have like this thing in the press where it's like, oh, we have this perfect relationship and it's this happy ending for both of us. Even though I think that was kind of the message that Lily Allen was putting out with her first marriage too, when she moved to the country and everything like that. And she'd had all this success in the music industry. I do vaguely remember a big tax issue that she had, which I think had something to do with her having to get rid of her like big house in the country that she had. But if I do a Lily Allen video, I'll look into all of that stuff. But with David Harbour, he really was blowing up, obviously, with Stranger Things and Marvel whenever they got together, because Black Widow was coming out, and then obviously this year we had Thunderbolts coming out, and Stranger Things was well into its huge success. And Lily Allen, she hasn't released an album in the past 7 years. She was mainly focusing on acting, and that really ties into their relationship breaking down because she went to go and do a play in London when they were primarily living in New York. Last year in 2024, there started to be reports of issues between David Harbour and Lily Allen, and over the end of 2024, it was reported in papers like the Daily Mail and on social media that they were splitting up, but it wasn't 100% sure that they were splitting and divorcing at that time. It was just a lot of discussion, and for years, the Daily Mail has reported that there was infidelity on David Harbour's side. At the end of 2024, it then was reported that Lily Allen had been seen back on Raya, the celebrity dating app. And in February 2025, People released an article that said they were splitting up and getting divorced. And that was kind of the exclusive. And from that point on, people were taking it as factual. Prior to the People article, or really any news of their split at all, as I said, the Daily Mail at this point years ago were reporting that David Harbour had been unfaithful multiple times and was having affairs, including one with a costume designer. Since the People article in February, rumors have swirled even more about his infidelity, and God, were they confirmed, coincidentally or not so coincidentally, just as Stranger Things was kicking off the press tour for their final season, literally 10 days ago. Lily Allen hasn't released an album in over 7 years, and it wasn't even widely known that she was working on a new album. Literally 3 weeks and a day ago from when I'm filming this, on October 19th, Lily Allen announced that she was releasing a new album in 5 days, and on October 24th, she did just that. And again, this was literally when Stranger Things press tour was starting. And in my opinion, there is only the tiniest of tiny chances that this release wasn't extremely calculated. Now, I'm not a music person at all, like at all. And so when I read this story to begin with, I thought, oh, I'm going to have to go and speak to like one of my friends that is very talented like musically and will be able to help me understand like the lyrics and things like that. But even someone as dense as me with music, there's no inferring anything. Like, it is literally written black and white what she's trying to say, and none of it is good for David Harbour. The album is all about Lily Allen and David Harbour's relationship and the breakdown of their marriage and his infidelity. In the album, Lily details David asking for an open marriage, which she didn't want to agree to, but she did as she was very in love with him. And Lily was at this point doing a play in London, which was a huge deal for her, but it seems as though David Harbour was not very supportive. I'm showing on the screen a note from him that they posted on social media about the opening day of her play that reads, "My ambitious wife, these are bad luck flowers, because if you get reviewed well in this play, you will get all kinds of awards and I will be miserable, your loving husband." Is this supposed to be a joke? Yes, but given that he was asking her for an open marriage at the time and cheating and apparently not positive about her success, maybe it's one of those like truths in joke things. In the album, she also discusses the rules and stipulations for her agreeing to this open marriage, open relationship. The main one being that he wouldn't have feelings and emotions and that it wouldn't be some sort of relationship with the other person. The rest of the album goes into a lot of details about David's infidelity and his breaking of the rules that they set out for this open marriage, and how Lily grappled with everything, her pain and her discovery of David Harbour not only breaking these rules, but his massive amount of infidelity. As I said, the lyrics are very explanatory and telling. There is even a song titled Palace, where Alan details going into an apartment her and Harbour shared that she apparently thought was a dojo, but was in fact, as she says, a palace. She sings in the lyrics about finding all these handwritten letters from broken-hearted women that David Harbour had been with, and then details finding a Dwayne Reed bag with hundreds of condoms and toys and plugs and lube and more. And Dwayne Reed must have been really happy about the free marketing there. The album absolutely exploded when it was released 5 days after its announcement, and not only did multiple songs chart, the album peaked at #2 in the UK album charts. The album and songs were critically praised, and given how detailed the lyrics were, discussions exploded on social media, and everybody was talking about everything that was in these lyrics. A massive amount of David Harbour's exes like Julia Stiles and his co-stars like Florence Pugh liked and supported all of Lily Allen's social media posts about her album, and she did post like a ton of stuff about this album, and Florence Pugh was like liking everything. There is this really little interview that I came across, and this is totally me inferring stuff from this interview and my opinion on what I think is going on here based on some things that I've heard from people who work at Marvel. So this could totally be Florence Pugh just saying how much she likes someone else. But there's an interview from when they promoted Thunderbolts, and it's David Harbour and Florence Pugh, and they end up talking about Pedro Pascal. And David Harbour went to school with Pedro Pascal, and he's saying how they went up for the same role in a play at school, and Pedro Pascal ended up getting it. And Florence Pugh goes into like this little bit about how, you know what I really like about Pedro Pascal? He's just such a nice guy and all of this. And especially with like the whole don't worry, darling situation. And again, just some things that people have said that have worked on Marvel sets for a long time. I wouldn't be surprised if this was like a little, yeah, he's super nice and you aren't. So again, that's just me reading the situation. It could be nothing to do with that. I did just want to mention it because I really do find it funny that Florence Pugh has gone through and liked like every single post from Lily Allen's album.
I've been mad at him for 30 years.
It's also just that he's so unbelievably kind. You just instantly feel like he's your friend, and as audience members and also people in the industry, that's just so needed, having someone that is so pure and stands up for the right things and is just a good human. Yeah. It's lovely to find a good human.
About a week after the release of the album, the Stranger Things final press tour launched, and 2 weeks after the album's release, the Stranger Things season 5 premiere took place. By the time the premiere rolled around, though, there was even more attention on David Harbour, because on November 6th, there was a story that came out exactly 1 week after Lily Allen's new album and on the weekend before the premiere. So this happened on November 1st and the premiere was on November 6th. On November 1st, the Daily Mail reported that there was an alleged issue at one point point between Millie Bobby Brown and David Harbour when they were filming Stranger Things. The Mail discussed how there were pages and pages of allegations Millie Bobby Brown had made at Harbour, and she also had made claims of bullying. The Mail also reported that Millie had a representative with her on set after this situation, and that she'd filed the harassment and bully claim with Netflix. The story circulated widely after being published in the Daily Mail, and from the article's release, David Harbour was not a part of the other press stuff up until the premiere. His first public appearance after this story broke was at the premiere. We will talk about what happened at the premiere. I just want to talk about the article first, so there's context. The day after the premiere, Variety did release an article where they claimed they had verified what the Mail had reported, or like the fact that there were these allegations. They were filed as a claim with Netflix by Millie Bobby Brown. And the day after, Variety, Deadline also printed an article saying that this took place and that they'd verified the claims. Although Variety and Deadline did say that there were harassment and bullying claims, but they were now dealt with. So when the first article from the Daily Mail came out, of course, a lot of people were very skeptical with it being the Daily Mail. Now, I want to be clear, the Daily Mail is horrendous. It's horrendously invasive. Whenever I have to use it as a source, like when they are the original printer of a story, I even will put like, the Daily Mail, because they just, I mean, everybody knows what the Daily Mail is. It's a rag, and British tabloids are horrendous in general, but they're pretty top of the list. They exaggerate and poke and pry, but I do think a lot of the time there is conflation of scum and untrue. The Daily Mail is a British tabloid, and in the UK, there are extremely strict libel laws, meaning it's extremely easy for people to sue papers and media outlets for, among things, defamation. So a lot of the time, the Daily Mail, they'll be exaggerating, they'll be blowing things up, but there will be some element of truth to a lot of their stories. In fact, Lily Allen actually in November 2010 took legal action against Associated Newspapers, which is the parent company of the Daily Mail, after the newspaper published, ironically, photographs of her home. Also, another Lily Allen Daily Mail tie thing is in September 2018, she ended up posting an Instagram story discussing how she had paid for intimacy with female escorts in 2014 while she was still married to her first husband, Sam Cooper. Allen had included details of the events in her book, which is called My Thoughts Exactly, but she said that she had made the Instagram post because the Daily Mail were publishing an article about it the following day. So she knew that was coming. When the article first came out in the Mail about Millie Bobby Brown and David Harbour, it mentioned a source being Lily Allen's friend, and that has now been changed. And I'm not saying this is true all of the time, but a lot of the time when an article quotes someone close to X or a friend of X, it's not unheard of for that source to be X, or to be X's team at least. Like when you see all these articles about Brooklyn Beckham and Nicola Peltz and how they feel about the feud with David and Victoria, which I do have a video on the Beckhams as well, it's them. It's Brooklyn and Nicola in my opinion. And on the other side, it's David and Victoria's team, in my opinion. And that's just the way it works a lot of the time. Sometimes it'll be teams or agents, managers that are trying to divert a story about someone else, and they'll offer up, hey, we'll give you this story if you don't run this story. That happens all the time, and really a lot in the royal family too. I mean, today, everything is videoed and viewed and reviewed and discussed and poured over. I mean, hello. And when there's a lot of frenzy whipping up, like with what's happening with Stranger Things, the premiere, the final season, I think the timing is just too perfect. And maybe that sounds like a little bit conspiracy, but Stranger Things final season is happening. One of the biggest things David Harbour's ever done. This album comes out. There's been no album for 7 years. The Millie Bobby Brown story comes out, especially because that claim about Millie Bobby Brown, it's allegedly something that happened ages ago. So it's only coming out now, like well over a year ago, apparently this happened. And it just seems like that also is information that Lily Allen would be privy to because it was so long ago that she was still married to David Harbour. But what would be the reason for anyone else to release the information at this exact time? And it appears like something like this has happened before with the Daily Mail, as just prior to Lily Allen and David Harbour splitting, and I mean them actually splitting when they did, long before it was public, the Daily Mail printed a number of articles about David Harbour's infidelity. And when you read those stories now, they are pretty accurate, even mentioning, of course, like not by name, the costume designer who Lily calls Madeline in her song. And Madeline is one of the people that David Harbour had an affair with. Also, the fact that Netflix did not issue a denial. That's odd. This is the biggest show on Netflix. They have spent $500 million for the final season. Never mind the money before that for the other seasons. And if this story about Millie and David wasn't true, and it was like a really small story and the album hadn't happened and it was just something being discussed on social media, okay, like, you know, they're not going to say anything and draw more attention to it. But this story was huge. I mean, it is huge still. Like, it's, everybody still is talking about it, and because I'm like looking into all this stuff and keep getting fed even more and more about it, and people pouring over like stuff, what's happening, myself included, about what is going on at the premiere and things, and people are still discussing it. It would make all the sense in the world to issue a statement saying it wasn't true. Also, at the premiere, Sean Levy and the Duffer Brothers were asked about the situation, and none of them issued a denial either. The Duffer Brothers said, "Obviously, you understand I can't get into personal on-set matters, but I will say we've been doing this for 10 years with this cast, and at this point, they're family, and we deeply care about them. So, you know, nothing matters more than just having a set where everyone feels safe and happy." I mean, in my opinion, that is like the classic saying nothing. And I mean, we all know how businesses love to say that they're family. Sean Levy said, "At the end of the day, that's the job. You have to create a respectful workplace where people feel comfortable and safe. And so we did everything to build that environment. And we're proud of the fact that we did so. I've read a bunch of stories that range from wildly inaccurate to ... There's so much noise around it, but the truth is we view this crew and cast as family, and so we treat each other with respect, and that's always been the bedrock." Again, no denial. If there's no truth to this at all, why would you not just say, oh, it's a load of fucking rubbish, like there's no truth to it? And from what I've been told from actual multiple lawyers who worked at Netflix, they don't work there anymore, they work at different streaming services in different studio, but from what they said, if there was something that became a big story, and I mean, there's no bigger story than this, there's no bigger show on Netflix, money-wise and everything-wise, than Stranger Things. If something is not true and it's getting enough traction, there's no reason that they wouldn't issue a denial. When David Harbour and Millie Bobby Brown arrived at the Stranger Things premiere, they did put on quite a show, and there were a lot of people online that were saying, oh, I knew it wasn't true, look, they're so happy to be around one another, which I don't think you can put much stock in their behavior at the premiere when they're both actors with big careers on the line, promoting a TV series that has been almost 10 years of their life, and $500 million was spent on it. Of course, they're going to pretend like everything is great, especially because neither one of them will have wanted this story out in the media. I know actors that absolutely fucking loathe each other. I know actors that loathe writers, that loathe showrunners. I mean, the L word Generation Q. And you would never know it. Well, the L word Generation Q became very obvious by the end, but you wouldn't know because, of course, they're going to put on this whole show. And I know there is now a rumor going around that the bullying claim, it coming out, was PR and like a stunt for season 5 of Stranger Things. I personally don't think that that's true. It's such a damaging claim and such a negative story that I just can't imagine they would want it for this particular situation. Don't get me wrong, negative stories get pushed all the time for PR and marketing things. More so what I was talking about earlier, where it'll be like, I'll give you this story if you don't print this story. And a lot of the time it'll be like, I'll give you this story about a B-lister so that you save my A-list client that brings in money. And certain situations like that does absolutely happen, but I just don't think that in this case that is what's happening. I don't think either of these actors would want this story to be used to generate publicity, and neither would Netflix. One of the most beloved relationships, if not the most beloved on the show, and at the core of the show, is the relationship between Millie Bobby Brown's character Eleven and David Harbour's character Hopper. So I just don't think that's what happened. Hi guys, Editing Ash here. I am going to try and be as concise as possible here because I've recorded this section like 5 times because I keep going off on a 10-minute tangent, but I just kind of want to reinforce what I was saying about the show that was being put on with the whole David Harbour and Millie Bobby Brown thing. And it's a premiere for a hugely successful TV show. Like, of course, there's going to be everybody wanting to put their best foot forward, Netflix wanting to look like everything's perfect. But I do feel like that the major focus on Millie Bobby Brown and David Harbour kind of took away from the rest of the cast. And as I said, like for these videos, I watch and read like absolutely everything and everything I possibly can. And I even like when I finished editing this video and now I'm checking it because I'm hoping to post it tonight, I literally went back and rewatched all of the premieres and like the season 5 premiere stream. When I'm looking at all the other premieres, like this one was just so different, and I felt like it kind of took away from like the rest of the kids. Like they were always the focus of the premieres, and there was just a lot of little things that maybe again, you know, that you wouldn't normally look and be like, oh, that's kind of weird, but when I'm watching all the other ones, it just, these certain things stood out. So they would normally have obviously like all the cast doing the picture together, and David Harbour in like the previous years would do like a lot of antics, and you can either say, oh, he was trying to just be fun and all of that, or on the other side, I'm sure people will say, oh, he was trying to get a ton of attention on him. And when they're taking all of the picture, he would always lie down in the front of the cast, and he didn't do any sort of antics like that this year. And he'd like mess around with all of like the kid, you know, the younger kids like Finn and Gatton and stuff, and you didn't even see him with any of them at all. It was only with Millie Bobby Brown. And there also was a point where I can almost like hear the meeting, the like PR crisis meeting, because they had Millie Bobby Brown, David Harbour, the CEO of Netflix, and the director of original content at Netflix all stand and take a picture and, you know, do the whole thing together. And I have never seen them do that before with them. Like it was usually Millie Bobby Brown, the Duffer Brothers, and Sean Levy, and sometimes there'd be like a Netflix person in there too. But it just really looked like, here's our happy Netflix family all together. I'm sure some people are like, oh, you're blowing that out of proportion and seeing something that's not there. And they could just have been taking a picture. Like that's the other side to it. But I also, whenever I was looking at like all of the coverage of the season 5 premiere, there is nothing that is like season 5 premiere, like, oh, the last time the Stranger Things kids go to a premiere. I know they're not kids anymore, but you know what I mean. And it all of the content, and not just through Netflix, like through Entertainment Tonight, Access Hollywood, Extra, all of them were titled Millie Bobby Brown and David Harbour reunite, talk about their special relationship, all of these things. And that's honestly because today you have this problem of people taking sponsorships and all the other stuff I've talked about with that, but you also have this access restriction. I don't even know if there's a word for it, but it's the sort of thing that you will not be invited to premieres or to have a press pass or any sort of event like that if you are actually going to give your opinion or ask good questions, because all of these people who get invited to this sort of stuff, they will toe the Netflix line because they want to be invited to the next thing. And it is in line with sponsorships. Like, you will never see someone like Jenny Nicholson invited to a Disney or a Netflix premiere. Jenny is honestly my favorite YouTuber, and it's why I think it's so important to support people like her. She has over 1 million subscribers. Her videos are amazing. When she releases one, they get like 10, 12, 14 million views, articles in the New York Times and Rolling Stone. And yet you will see people invited to Disney premieres with, like, no shade, 5,000 subscribers, but Jenny Nicholson can't get a press pass to a Disney event or invited to a premiere because they don't want someone there giving their authentic opinion or asking good questions. And it's why you get these questions and they're all softballs, or it's the same question over and over again. And that's honestly why today there are so few, I honestly can't think of any off the top of my head, good interviewers and good celebrity interviewers. I honestly could talk about this topic all day because it just goes down so many roads, but I'm gonna wrap this up here. But it's just something to keep in mind with any sort of these stories in the media and things like that, because there are so many people that are putting whatever you see together, and it's not just Netflix or the actors or things, but it's just part of such a big machine, and it's all tied into, like, money and all that stuff. And I probably sound like a conspiracy person now, but anyway, back to past me. My personal opinion on what happened after obsessively looking into this like I do, I do think there's truth to this. Do I think it's exactly what the Daily Mail said? No, absolutely not. I think Millie Bobby Brown did file a claim against him. Millie Bobby Brown doesn't also seem like someone who takes a lot of shit, which good for her. She's called out the paparazzi and really scummy journalists before, and put a pin in that for a second later, actually. But the story in general probably has been blown up and exaggerated, and it's not uncommon at all for actors to have issues between one another. I mean, see about half of my videos, if not more. Also, I wouldn't be surprised if there was some serious jealousy or resentment from David Harbour for how much of a star Millie Bobby Brown is. I spoke to some people who worked with him before, again, mainly at Marvel, and a few people who were in more like PA type roles said he kept very much to himself, but then a few others who had a bit more to do with him didn't have a very positive experience. And it also seems to have been pretty well known that he was having these affairs. Apparently, it wasn't just one costume designer, that was a department that he favored. And he also, I heard, was known to take a lot of people away on vacation. And I think that's just another way he was trying to keep things contained, considering he was so publicly married and he's in Stranger Things and Marvel, two of the biggest things in the world. He would go on vacation with people and he would go after people that were working on projects he was, which means that there is a bit more discretion because they are working in the industry and they know how it would impact their careers if they spoke out. Because even though it was reported in places like the Daily Mail for years that he was having affairs, it was never the actual people that he was having affairs with going to the tabloids, which is the risk that you run if you are a movie TV star that's going out to bars and picking people up. And obviously there's things like NDAs and stuff, but I never heard any allegations that he was asking people to sign NDAs or anything like that. That's just something I know that people have mentioned, but I never heard anything about that. One of my friends had a family member who had to work with him to teach him something like individually, and they said that he was just like very rude, tried to like blow off the lessons and stuff a lot, and all around was just like not a positive experience and very like difficult to deal with, and didn't create like a nice environment for anyone around him. Hi guys, editing Ash here, just very, very, very quickly to say that the reason I'm not disclosing what the person was teaching David Harbour is because I think it's very minor spoilers for Avengers Doomsday. And if someone reminds me when Avengers Doomsday comes out, I'll let you know. But I think also it will become obvious when the movie comes out. And it just also, the person will be very identifiable if I said it like now, because obviously people are watching the video now. But just to let you know that. So back to past me. But I will say, especially people who have been at Marvel for a long time, he wasn't top of any of their lists of most difficult to work with. Those spots still belong to Jeremy Renner and Anthony Mackie. But anyway, I've spoken in many videos about how a lot of this behind the scenes issues with actors all come back to ego. I've explained before how certain things can even look like very minor things to us, and stuff a lot of people wouldn't even notice really matters to actors. From everything that's come out about David Harbour and from what people have said about working with him, he does have a massive ego at play, and I wouldn't be surprised if there might have been some element of his treatment of Millie Bobby Brown stemming from what a huge star she's become at such a young age. There's no doubt the kids are the biggest stars of Stranger Things, and Millie Bobby Brown is the biggest star of the kids. So much so, I noticed that something happened in season 4 that seems very insignificant, but to me is actually pretty unprecedented. And I can't think of another example at the time that this has happened. And I think this also points to how big of a star Millie Bobby Brown is and how much she is the star of that show. I said earlier about the re-signing of contracts, and it seems there were new contracts issued at season 4 of the show. In the credits for seasons 1, 2, and 3, the OG stars are in the same order, and the layout is the same. Winona Ryder, David Harbour, and then it starts listing the kids 2 at a time with one on top of the other. It then is after David Harbour, Finn Wolfhard, and Millie Bobby Brown, and then it goes on to the rest of the kids and so forth. But in season 4, they had the same thing, like Winona Ryder, David Harbour, and then they had flipped Finn Wolfhard and Millie Bobby Brown's names. There are also call sheets that have come out that have this same listing, original listing of the order that the credits are in, which how you are in the call sheet really matters to actors. Number 1 on the call sheet is what everybody wants to be. That's the star, that's the person that's making the most money, and all of those things. It also, like in movies, it ties into poster and how your name is and everything like that. There are hours and hours of meetings and clauses in contracts and negotiations and arguments over how your name appears in the credits. I'm sure there are other examples, but I honestly can't think of any where it has been the original stars of the show and names have been moved in the credits without anyone leaving the show. So shows like Buffy and Charmed are good examples when someone leaves. Like in Buffy, when Anthony Stewart Head left, he was the person who had like the end credit with and Anthony Stewart Head as Giles. So that's usually the person who's the biggest name but not the lead. And so when he left, Alison Hannigan got that spot and had Alison Hannigan as Willow. And a lot of the time when cast are executive producers, they'll flip the order of whatever they are in the acting credits. They'll flip those for the executive producers. The stuff is so negotiated by agents and managers. Millie Bobby Brown is with William Morris, which I actually had a meeting with them last summer about signing with them, and they were super nice and the meeting was great. But when I looked into like YouTubers who have done that and have signed with either them or with other people, it really seemed to me, and this is like no shade at all, it really seems like you just become more like the face of the channel. And there's a lot, because they give you like a lot of resources too. Like they will build you a set and like get you editors and script writers and researchers and all this stuff. And that's why usually when people sign a YouTuber will sign with them, you'll see like the production like output pick up majorly. And when I looked at people who had done that, it just wasn't what I wanted to do. And again, like no shade whatsoever. I'm sure they're like, you're dumb girl, like you could make so much more money, but I like all the researching and writing and stuff. And so that is just not what I wanted to do. But they do, agents and managers, like they negotiate like everything for you. And like with YouTubers, it's sponsorships and all of that stuff and other things, tours and whatever. And with actors, it is these things. And usually it's how big the star is, how relevant they are to the production, and how good the agent is. And I mean, William Morris, they are one of the biggest in the world. Obviously, they did a good job with this because, again, I've never seen names flip like this before. I'm assuming when they signed on for season 4, they signed on for season 4 and 5. So I'd expect the credits to be the same in season 5. But if Millie Bobby Brown is billed after Winona Ryder or she's on the same page as David Harbour, then I can't imagine the fights that happened. But I don't think that will happen because it's probably highly likely that season 4 and 5 was like the same deal they signed together. But that would be wild. Usually what they do in a situation like this where they're signing a new contract and someone wants equal billing, they'll do this weird layout. So if Millie Bobby Brown was like, I want to be bumped to be equal billing with Finn Wolfhard, I don't want my name under his, they will usually have this thing where they do the first name, like usually it's the person who was the lead. They'll have Finn Wolfhard on the left side, because in English you read left to right, but his name will be lower. And then they'll have Millie Bobby Brown's on the right, but higher. And they do this in the movies all the time. The most recent example I can think of is A Simple Favor 2. Anna Kendrick was the lead in the first one. She had the first name placement on the left, but I'm assuming Blake Lively wanted equal billing for the second one. And so on all the promotional material and the credits and posters and all of that, Anna Kendrick has that left side lower placement. Blake Lively has higher right placement. It doesn't happen as much in TV shows. And it's funny, when I was writing this, I was sitting there thinking, what's a recent example of a TV show one? And literally was staring me in the face. I was watching the new drama Murdaugh series that has just come out. They're still releasing episodes of it. I think the 7th episode came out today. And I do actually have a video on the Murdaugh murders too. That was like one of my first videos that did really well. And on that show, they have the leads in this equal billing placement. They have Jason Clarke, lower left, Patricia Arquette, top right, because Patricia Arquette is the bigger name, but Jason Clarke is the lead and is in it more and stuff like that. So they have that equal billing. And like they're both executive producers, they flipped it for listing those credits. So the fact that now in season 4 and season 5, it will list Winona Ryder, David Harbour, Millie Bobby Brown, and then Finn Wolfhard under, that might not seem like a big deal, but that is a big deal. And obviously, that would also indicate she is making a lot more money than the other kids, as usually the order of things is tied to money as well. They do also use the credits sometimes in little trick ways, and this is just more like information. But if you don't want to know any Buffy or Scream spoilers, jump to the timestamp on the screen. But Amber Benson was famously added to the Buffy credits after 3 seasons of being a guest star. She was added in the same episode that she was killed. So I would love to see the contract for that. And there was also that done because Joss Whedon actually wanted to do that in the pilot episode of Buffy, but they wouldn't pay for like 2 credits to be made, and it was too complicated with like people's contracts and everything like that. Eric Bane played a character that Joss Whedon was killing off in the first episode. They wanted to put him in the credits, but it was just going to be too complicated and cost too much money, so they didn't do it. So he did it in season 6 with Amber Benson's character. There's also the famous example of Scream. Drew Barrymore was in like all of the promo material. I mean, it's her bloody face on the poster. And then when they had the figures in the front, like she was the most prominent in the front of the poster. And then this is how they get out of doing the credits a lot of the time. They'll list them alphabetically, but every other star is listed alphabetically, and then she is Drew Barrymore. And in 96, when this is coming out, everyone's like, oh, you know, Drew Barrymore is going to be like one of the main people. And she originally was supposed to be the lead in Scream, but she had a scheduling conflict. And so they killed her off in the first scene. And that was hugely, hugely shocking at the time because of how she was so prominent in the materials and such a big star and listed like right on the poster and stuff. So I explain all of that stuff to say how big of a deal some minor name flipping can be. I really can't think of another example where in the fourth season of a show, one star's name was put over the others when no one has left the show and it's the same people. So she must have good agents, as it's pretty crazy, especially for someone so young. But Stranger Things is kind of an unprecedented show. There isn't really another show like that was so popular and the kids grew up on it. I mean, I think the closest comparison is probably like the Harry Potter movies, where it's the same kids over a 10-year period. This isn't quite on par with what happened with Batman and Robin in the 80s, where despite playing Batman, George Clooney didn't even get alone top billing. Arnold Schwarzenegger had top billing, and there's tons of other crazy examples. And on top of everything I mentioned, there was also the behavior that I've briefly mentioned at the premiere. Of course, for this video, I watch like everything. I pull a ton of B-roll and read everything possible and speak to people, and I went through like all the videos of the past premieres and all of that stuff, and the situation at the season 5 premiere was so different from anything they've done before, especially with Millie Bobby Brown and David Harbour. The way they did the carpet, the interviews together, and the mass focus on them, it was very different from previous years. There wasn't even a picture of David Harbour with Winona Ryder. Maybe there's something going on there, but there was people on Twitter photoshopping a picture of them together because they didn't even interact at the premiere. It was very different from the previous years, which were all very similar. Honestly, I'm sure more information will come out about this. I guess not until the entire season is out, but you never know, depending how much Lily Allen or people around her knew about the situation, and I wouldn't be surprised if it comes out other ways down the line. As I said in the beginning, I was going to do this video as the next video to coincide with the release of season 5 part 1 on November 26th. Part 2 is out Christmas and the finale's out New Year's Eve, but with everything going on, I thought better to cover it a bit earlier. And I am actually going to pull a bit of a Stranger Things here and say this is the end of part 1. As long as this video doesn't bomb, I will make a part 2 because there's a lot more to talk about with the other cast members. So let me know if you want a part 2. If you made it to the end, thank you so much for watching. Leave MVP below so I can thank you. I do have some new merch out that I'll wear in my next video, but I couldn't pass up wearing my Stranger Things merch for this one. If you enjoyed the video, consider subscribing, but no pressure. Thank you for being here. I do have a ton of other videos on, especially behind the scenes of TV shows and pop culture in general. I've left my Patreon, merch, G's social media, my social media, all linked down below, along with the sources. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, make sure to stay safe, take care of yourselves, and G and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye, guys!